It's Craiggie's Connacht Rugby Podcast. We're in the Sportsground. It's about 20 minutes into the second half of the A game, and Connacht just scored another try, but unfortunately they're still behind. It's 22-31, and it's going to be a hell of a conversion if, for me, the Connacht's best player, David Hawkshaw, is going to kick this. But William, it's great to be back at the Sportsground.
Yeah, well, we were back for the ladies, so, but I suppose this is the start of the season with a big warm-up game this evening against Munster. This has been a decent enough game here. It's a typical game like this. It's kind of ebbs and flows, but Connacht have given themselves a chance now because they were looked down and out at half-time, and they've scored 2 tries in the second half, playing with the wind, which is pretty significant, and I think will be maybe a little quieter come the time of the men's game, but who knows, or the senior game later on. But yeah, it's good to be here. Still a long time till the season starts. It's a long way out. It's weeks away. It's the 21st of October, so there's a lot more rugby to be played in France before we get to that. Connacht in Edinburgh next week with a similar setup. I think the Eagles play first, and then the senior side taking on Edinburgh, but there's still 3 weeks after that, but they'll obviously have a break built in there as well. So yeah, it's nice to be back and going.
Okay, William, full-time score. Connacht came back and really dominated that half by winning 45 points to 31. It was really good work.
Yeah, it was the game of two halves, you could say. The biggest cliche in sport, really. The wind helped them a bit, but they increased their accuracy. Munster sort of switched off a bit. They went 31-5 up. They made a couple of changes, and once they were put under pressure, they didn't like it. They didn't react well to the pressure.
Yeah.
And they fell away, and Connacht just dominated really from about 7-8 minutes into the half. It's a good win. Look, these games are like that. They go a bit bananas sometimes in the second half, but it's still better to be on the winning side than the losing.
It certainly was. I was very impressed with how calm, especially Eric. The one word he used, because he was coaching them, one word he used more than any other all day was calm. No matter what, whether they're in defence or in attack. And they did stay calm. They never panicked. Even when they were that far behind, they never panicked. Really good to see. Yeah,
sometimes when you're that far behind, actually, it's maybe, and it's not that it's easier, but you almost don't chase the game because you think, well, there's no point chasing this, we're not. So you just grind your way back in, and then situations improve, opportunities arise, and they took them, and I'd say they were thrilled with themselves at the end. And obviously when they do the video review, there'll be lots and lots of mistakes to look at, but that's what it's all about, these type of games.
It is. Like, for me to go down against that far against the Munster team and come back and win going away.
Oh yeah,
they definitely looked a lot fitter as well, and the likes of Daniel Hawkshaw, when he came on, made a big impression, and Fiachna Barrett made a huge impression. 2 massive turnovers on the 5 metre line, their own 5 metre line, brought a physicality that I was very impressed with. He's a huge man.
Yeah, he is. He's a big boy, all right, this Fiachna. And we saw him in the under-20s, kind of, I wouldn't say he came from nowhere, but there was a bit of surprise when he did. But I'll tell you can see what the under-20s coaches saw in him for Ireland.
Yeah.
And if he can keep on that upward curve, it's interesting. He'll be knocking on the door pretty soon. Prop forwards often don't mature until they're a lot older, but I think Connacht will be watching him, and they'll be watching that performance. It was a good effort.
It certainly was. Okay, we'll take a break now, because as you can hear, the music's playing, because the senior match is going to kick off in a few minutes' time, so I'll be doing some updates during the game, and we'll chat about it afterwards. Okay, 19 minutes come on to 20 minutes into the game. I've got Dave Finn. Connacht are leading by 7 points to 3, and it's a really cracking game.
It is very much a surprise scoreline. I think if you saw the first 5 to 8 minutes, you think Munster have to score. Somehow we held them up over the line. I think with the TMO that might not have been quite the case, but great score from Dermot Kilgallen, released by John Porch after some good work off a scrum. We're now in front of the post with a scrum, but John Porch is now in the bin, so it'll be interesting to see what happens here. It's a good game. Munster will feel disappointed, only got 3 points for all their efforts, but Connacht, it is pre-season.
Okay, half-time. Connacht 7, Munster 10. Munster score a classic Munster-style try with their forwards crashing over the line, but they do really well to hold Connacht out that last 5 minutes of the second half. First half.
Yeah, I thought we got a bit blinkered. I thought we got a bit narrow. I think you raised a fair point. This isn't necessarily what we're expecting from Connacht. There's no harm in having a second string to your bow, and it is pre-season, try things out. But I do think there was... We had two guys sitting on the wing. We had both Smith and Kilgallen sitting on the wing, and we just never looked like we were going to pass the ball out because the two centres got dragged in.
Yeah.
They were also first receivers. That's fine. There are going to be teams where that's going to work, but this is Munster. They perfected this. They have actually the copyright on this stuff, so they are more than happy for you to do that. So it needs to be a little bit more thinking. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the second half. I think Munster is starting. Munster, we'll see where their fitness are. I think they have less to come off the bench than we do. But again, it's pre-season. It's been a good game so far. Everybody's, it's definitely pre-season. It's not been a carnival. These games never are between Connacht and Munster, but there's a lot to chew on for both management teams.
There certainly is. Yeah, Connacht being very, very direct. I don't ever remember seeing Connacht being as direct as they are. Everything seems to be going off the second receiver. Just seems to be running straight lines and trying to smash through the middle and trying to keep that rush defence honest. But we're not doing anything with it then after that. It's just continuously doing the same thing. So maybe it's just something they're trying out, and we might see more variety in the second half. But it's good. Connacht looked as though they're quite capable of winning this game, but.
So do Munster, to be fair. Munster.
And I was going to say, but so do Munster too. But it's a fairly even match, which isn't bad for Connacht taking on the champions. But we'll talk again on 60 minutes. Okay, Dave, that's the sound of JJ Hanrahan just missing a kick as Connacht score their second try of the second half after a half where Munster have completely dominated.
Yeah, our discipline has let us down, but I hate to say it, but I've been really disappointed with the referees. Inconsistency is spectacular. I mean, look, we're giving away penalties. There's no point saying we're not, and they've exploited that. But when you warn one team twice and then allow them to make more penalties and don't produce a card, and then produce a card very early on for the other team, it does look like you're inconsistent. Some of the decisions that have been made are really strange. Munster have been allowed. Their breakdown, they're doing very well at breakdown, but they are being allowed to do things that are illegal. But they've taken full advantage of us going down to 14 men. They scored two good tries. Mixing it up, they look good every time they have the ball. There's no point saying otherwise. Zebo, who's gone off, is probably, you say he's lost a lot of weight. Certainly his feet are back. And Joey Carbery's have been quietly very, very, very good without being spectacular.
He has. Connacht made 10 changes at half-time. They've made even more changes since, which doesn't help.
Everybody's on. There's only two Munster lads to come on. You would expect Munster to be tired simply because they've got more players on the pitch who've played the full game, but we can't afford to be making... We look very disjointed since we made all the subs. That's got to be said.
Okay, full-time. Munster win 24-19. Connacht were sort of trying to bang away at the line, but they couldn't get their line out right at the very end. Lost 3 in a row. A bit disappointing.
2.5 actually.
Well, 2.5, yeah, but even so. A bit disappointing in the end, but Connacht did make so many changes at half-time that really disturbed what they were doing. But the sin bin, they lost 14 points in the sin bin, and that's really what lost them the game.
Oh, absolutely. If you compared it to 10-minute periods, so we lost John Porch in the first half, and we just camped on their line. We ate the clock, and we'll actually feel disappointed we didn't score. Second one, Paul Boyle. First of all, it's as close out as it was. But they just went, okay, we're going to make it much simpler on ourselves. We didn't see the ball. They scored 2 tries. And when you lose by 5 points, you cough up 14 points in a sin bin period. Yeah, you can pin to that. The 2.5 overthrown, 2.5 blown lineouts in the last 5 minutes, which is disappointing. And also this desire to run through Munster. You don't run through Munster. Nobody runs through Munster. Even Graham Roundtree's new sexy running Munster, you don't run over them. We ran around them. Some of the running, when we did try and go through them, we carved through them. Carl Ford made an excellent run. Shane Bolton made an excellent run. Even John Porch at the end made an excellent run. There are things that I'm not happy with. I think Munster, a bit like Wales-Fiji, one team got carded when they made errors. Yeah. When they made penalties, another team didn't, even though there were multiple on both sides. But ultimately, good to see what we're doing. I'm not convinced that the style that we played for periods of the game when we kept it tight. At one point, I looked up and everybody was. If you split I know we normally split the half sort of like vertically, but if you split it horizontally, we had 14 players on the stand half of the side, and Shane Bolton. And the nearest player was on the halfway line. So there's what sort of pass is Shane Bolton supposed to get there? It was interesting. It's good to get these things, try them out. If they don't work, they don't work. It's done in pre-season. There's nothing gained or lost in this. Good blowout. We used an awful lot of players today. Some players have put their hands up. Some players have maybe taken a step back. But we're the coaches. It'll be interesting to see what they say after the game. I think they'll feel disappointed with the penalty count. I think they'll feel disappointed with the blown lineouts. But I think the big thing is that the 10 changes at half time, you either make 15 changes or you make none. And I think Munster were clever. I think they were forced into a change, and they looked much more coherent in that first 15 minutes of the second half.
They did, even though we did score the first try in the second half. But other than that, it did sort of split up what Connacht were doing. It was like we watched two completely different Connacht teams today.
Oh, we did. We literally did at one point.
Yeah, it was.
And technically, you've seen four, so.
Yeah, like I said, the only thing I found is very narrow in attack, but when we did break through, we did it very well. So it'll be interesting to see how we progress from here. We've got a game next week, so Connacht should be a lot better for that when they go away to Edinburgh next week for their second pre-season game. Okay, here's the post-match press conference.
Pete, these games always throw up different things, but what's the initial view of that 5-point defeat for Connacht? You made a lot of changes during the game as well. So what's the verdict immediately?
Yeah, look, I think it was the next step up that we needed. It was certainly, as we expected, a step up in intensity and probably the challenge of the game from that Ulster week. And as I said in the preview, it's no disrespect to Ulster, but it's just the nature of getting into your second game and everyone being a little bit fitter and hopefully a little bit slicker. There was a lot of errors from both teams that probably broke up the game, probably stopped either team really getting going for long periods. But I thought we showed glimpses that we could cause a lot of damage to some good defences this season, and certainly the way we played in patches was really satisfying. I think the good lessons out of it is that if we're not staying on task and doing the simple things really well, phase after phase after phase, then you obviously don't get to build on those opportunities, or you're gifting the opposition chances, entries to your 22 and so forth. So there's a lot we took from it. There were some players in the first half team, as it were, that really put their hand up, and a few in the second half team as well. So I think when you blend those performances together, there'll be a bunch of guys that are really happy with their work, and probably some others that are a little bit frustrated.
Yeah, one of the frustrations for everybody in the team, 2 yellow cards. I mean, that's, you barely can deal with one in a game, but to get 2, that's frustration and something you'll be talking about, no doubt.
Yeah, I think the general discipline in terms of once Munster got entries to our 22 and there were a few runs of back-to-back penalties there, I think the flow of that is something that we'll definitely address. The yellow cards themselves are possibly a little bit rough, but certainly once teams get that close to your line, you've got to find that sweet spot of being on the edge and obviously not giving an inch to the opposition, but at the same time you don't want to give them easier opportunities further down the field, or as you said, certainly go down to 14 men or worse. So there's lessons in that, but I think it's probably how we respond and stay within our systems when we're close to our line, obviously defending for our lives. But that's exactly what these games are for, to put you in those sort of pressure situations. You can't always replicate at training, and see which bits of the system hold up, which bits don't, see which individuals react in the right way, and see which ones maybe try and force matters and rather than staying on task. So lots to learn, as I said, from that.
Towards the end of the game as well, maybe frustration, 3 lineouts inside their 22, opportunity to maybe get a win or get the chance to score. That's something you can work on, but again, that comes down maybe just to individual error or just communications problems.
Yeah, I think teething problems in terms of just that cohesion between thrower and jumper, and they were smart calls and they just didn't execute it in the moment. So 3 opportunities like that, all from penalties that we'd earned, which is a good sign that we kept putting ourselves back in the game. But we should be putting at least one of those away, and that's a game from that position, whether or not it's a justified result overall, but from that position with 3 penalties and 3 line-out opportunities, you've got to execute one, and then you probably do win the game from there. So, look, I think for us, we got to about 77 minutes, 3 minutes to go, and said, look, we'll get at least one more chance, because I think at that stage we were defending well, and we showed that when we had the ball, we were causing Munster problems. It was just that we weren't able to translate those opportunities that then turned into penalties. We didn't, translate those into platforms to score. So again, work to do there, but encouraging signs, and certainly plenty for us to build on over the next next week before Edinburgh.
Just looking at the players who maybe stood out a little bit today, Andrew Smith I think his speed a couple of times caught people by surprise. You could hear the ooh in the crowd. Joe Joyce coming on, big battle in the back row as well. And players stood out for me, commentating on the stream, was Cathal Ford as well in the second half. That's somebody who's kicked on from last season. But talk to me a bit about Andrew Smith, because he covers the ground pretty rapidly.
He does. He's a wonderful athlete. I mean, absolute dynamite with ball in hand, and we've seen that since probably the first week of training he was in with us, and we're tremendously excited about what he can do with us and what he can do for us this season, and hopefully beyond that. So no, Smithy's a good man. He's got a sense of adventure in terms of how he attacks with the ball, and I think very different personality to Mac Hansen in terms of how they approach the game. But I think what he's got is that ability to back himself and to run out of tight spaces and not just beat one defender but beat two or three. And sometimes you might not quite know where he's going, but he comes out the right side of things, and next thing you know, you've got a line break, you're on the front foot. So that allied with an unbelievable work rate, which I think that's just his personality in terms of how he applies himself, but also his experience of the Sevens programme in terms of the work required to cover field distances within that. He's not just the guy getting the line breaks, he's often the guy supporting others and getting crucial touches. So lots to like about Andrew. I think he'll be a real dangerous weapon for us this season.
And is he's aligned to Connacht now full time? He's not going to drift back to Sevens. He's not just here on a bit of a run out, is he?
No, he's fully contracted to us this season. Yep, he's on board.
And Cathal Ford as well. He's a local guy. He had a really good season last year, but he's sort of started the way he finished last season.
Yeah, he has. Delighted for Fordy. I think he had that breakthrough game against the Sharks here at the Sportsground last season, and scored a fine try and probably made everyone sit up and pay attention to the talent he's got. And as you said, a local lad as well, who we're terrifically proud of already. I was pleased for him because he's done really well through pre-season. He had half a game against Ulster, and he's done the little things really well. But I think for him to layer on tonight, to have a couple of really big moments, ball in hand, a couple of great carries, and giving us a real thrust through that midfield, that's really exciting. And again, it puts his name to the front of mind for us and the outside world. But it'll also give him confidence to take through to Edinburgh and then the season ahead. So it's good timing for Fordy, and he works hard. He deserves the success, and hopefully we can transfer that into the competitive games to come.
And finally, from me, Shane Bolton and Byron Ralston back after injuries. Great to see them taking part again. Speed, maybe the accuracy wasn't quite there tonight, but is that an indication of the way that Connacht want to play this season? That they really want to crank it up even further? That it's about putting pressure on teams because of the speed and skills?
Yeah, I think so. I think we want to do a better job this season of really probably understanding what our best version of the game is, what our rugby identity is, and we want to entertain. We want to have a real go. And at times last year we had to batten down the hatches and probably kick the ball a little bit more than we would have liked, just to try and navigate our way through games that we felt at the time that was the best way of getting us in the contest. But this year with the squad we've got and probably a slightly different mindset we've got around how we're playing the game, we want to go after it. We want to get the ball to width a little more often than we did last year, and recognising we've still got to do the tough stuff well to earn the right to do that. But guys like Andrew Smith, Shane Bolton, you mentioned, Byron Ralston, obviously with others that we've had before in terms of doing with Kilgallen, John Porch, Mac to come back in as well. There's some real firepower there, and I think we'd be silly not to try and evolve our game so we're getting those guys in the game a little more often than maybe the previous seasons.
Thanks, Pete. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, William. Cheers.
Peter, I'm just wondering, would you use the video of how you used up the time in that first yellow card period as sort of like an example of lads, just because you're down to 14 men doesn't mean that you suddenly have to cough up the ball, and maybe you lose the second yellow card is probably what happens when you aren't in control of the ball.
Yeah, I think it's certainly important to have a plan, or at least a response to those situations, and some of that's governed simply by the weight of possession you've got at any given time, and actually giving yourself a chance to manage the game a bit better. But certainly for us, we would train with lopsided numbers from an attack point of view and a defence point of view intentionally at different times, and one of the things we talk about then is it's important that we don't shy away from how we want to play the game, and we still try and create flow and attack, and still try and create numbers at the line. Similarly in defence, that we're still aggressive enough that we can cut off opposition's attack before they can get to edges. Now, it's not always going to be possible, but we're definitely trying this season to put players in more situations where they're out of their comfort zone with that, and stay true to our game. That said, there needs to be a bit of common sense to make sure, well, actually, if we can take a little bit longer getting from play to play, or if we can hang on to the ball that little bit longer, even if we're not particularly going anywhere, we can take some minutes off the clock as well. So there's a balance in there, but I'd hate to see us just batten down the hatches and stop playing because we had a man off the field. So the guys showed good bravery around that.
That last minute of the first half, were you happy with how we saw it out, in the sense that it seemed to get a bit narrow, and we didn't utilise the very width you've just been talking about?
Yeah, I think once we got into that attacking 22, we had those back-to-back penalties, and we were tapping from those to get into the pick and drive game and really sort of try and play on top of the defence. I think they were pretty good decisions. I think for us, we had confidence that we were going to get over, and we were winning penalties on the back of that strategy. So I didn't have an issue with us playing sort of tight and direct there. But then it's making sure that you actually stay in that and you stay relentless until you get the reward from it. And perhaps we could have just stayed in those phases a little bit longer, and we might have got the score on the back of it.
And overall, over the 2 games, you've had a chance to see about 40 players today. Are you happy with where the squad is, not just in terms of depth, but also some of the young lads who were in the first game? Are you happy with how things are progressing? And it's a step up from Ulster, and then next week again, you want to see more progression.
Yeah, it was definitely a progression today in both games as well, and as expected going in, and that was the case. I think from the A game earlier in the day, the exciting thing for us was that there are a handful of senior players that were in that game, and the challenge laid down to them was, regardless of who was around them and regardless of the level of that game, there were certain things we wanted to see from them in terms of how they went about their rugby, but also behaviourally in terms of their attitude, speed off the ground, impact around the collisions. I think some of those senior guys did a really good job at demonstrating that in sort of more unfamiliar surroundings. But equally, you're looking at some of those guys coming through the academy, good number of under-19s players out there as well. And that's brilliant for us to know we've got that depth in the club now, where if there was a run of injuries in any one position, we've got the chance to use those guys. But it's not by coincidence. Like, those guys are training with us, full time at the moment, as much as they can around their studies and other commitments. So we're getting a cohesion, I think, a player development in place that, again, maybe wasn't there in previous seasons. So we'll see the reward of that, hopefully in some better 18 games, and then ultimately in a deeper depth chart for the rest of the squad as well.
Okay, that was the sound of Pete Wilkins talking to you, William. Yeah, he was pretty philosophical about that.
Yeah, I think you have to be. Look, it's a warm-up game. There was a lot of errors on both sides, as he said. I think Connacht will be more disappointed maybe than Munster in terms of the 2 yellow cards, which we've talked about. And that bit of play at the end was very scrappy. You have to convert those. It's tough on the thrower in, it's tough on the line out. John Muldoon will be all over that like a rash, you would say. He'll be probably pulling that up tomorrow on his video in the morning and going, okay, what the hell happened here? It was a stoppy-starty type of game. Some players did really well and some players didn't do as well, but that's what you get at the start of a season. I think the speed of some of the players, Andrew Smith particularly, Byron Ralston, whatever, was a bit...
Shane Bolton as well, you know, when he took off. But the other thing, as you mentioned at the end of the game, we were camped on their line at the end of the first half as well. It looks like we're pretty fit.
Oh, we're fit, but you can be as fit as a fiddle if you don't do the right thing with the ball. It doesn't make any difference. You can run all day, but it's ball skills. I mean, a team that's very good with ball skills and doesn't have fitness won't win, but the team that's very fit but doesn't have ball skills also won't win. We kind of need to have to marry the two of those. And at the end of that, certainly at the end of the second half, our ball skills just weren't quite there.
No, they weren't. So maybe it's just getting a mixture of that first half team with that second half team and putting them together.
Yeah, they made a lot of changes. A lot of players came on, and that disrupted them more than Munster, who actually kept their players on the park. They also had a full 20 minutes of the game with only 14 players. And it is hard, and it's discipline, and you've got to fix that. It doesn't matter whether you think the referee's been a bit harsh on you or whatever. You've just got to fix it. You've got to play to what he's looking for. We've seen that at the World Cup. It's really difficult. But I think, we went through in the interview with Pete there, the players that kind of stood out. They have a big weekend in Edinburgh next week now. The senior team are playing and the Eagles are playing, as far as I know, over there. So that's another big opportunity. And then it's 3 weeks to the first game. So they'll probably get a bit of time off, and then it'll be bang on straight in.
And you'd assume they'll have an internal game somewhere along the way.
You would think so. And then you've got 11 weeks. I said this on the stream commentary. On New Year's Day, we'll play Munster here. That'll be our 9th URC game, and it'll be halfway through the season of 18 games. And you'll also be halfway through your Champions Cup campaign. So you will know a hell of a lot about your season when those 11 weeks are over. They're going to be tough, hard games. You've got to win your home games. But it'll be interesting to see where both sides are when that game is played on the first day of 2024.
It certainly will. Okay. Dave's going to, before I finish off, Dave's one more thing.
I wouldn't get too worked up about where they both are. I know it was different. There were less games played last year, but I wouldn't say either club was too happy with where they were on New Year's Day last year.
No, but it's a different season and it's different feel to it. So, yeah, you'd hope that Connacht are doing a little bit better than they were at that time last season. Okay, we'll leave it there, folks. We'll keep it nice and sharp. I'm going to try and get this out as quickly as I can. And we'll talk again on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Loose, cut it loose. Break out or nothing changes. Sad